Yo guys, what's going on? Welcome to the channel, welcome to the first video on here, and it's going to be a tutorial on the Breezi Flick. Now I do have a couple series ideas which I'm going to do on both Rocket League and a couple other games soon, so if you do want to watch that and you like this sort of video, then feel free to drop a like and subscribe. But in terms of the Breezi Flick itself, I don't think the movement is that difficult. However, it's the timing of the different parts of the movement which you need to master in order to get that flow in the mechanic and then ultimately that flick of the ball. Alright, so we're going to split this movement into three different segments, three different movements if you will. And before we get into the first one, there's one thing you definitely need to do, which is bind a directional air roll. Now, as you can see, in this video we are going to use air roll left, which is bound to LB or L1 if you're on PlayStation. Now if you do choose to bind air roll right, just sort of do the opposite of what I do. And if you are just binding a directional air roll now, before you progress into the tutorial, I would just say go into free play, familiarise yourself with the air roll and the different movements you can do. Now the second thing, it's not really a requirement, but I just think it helps, and that is rebinding your boost if you haven't already. As you can see, I've bound it to RB or R1 if you're on PlayStation, and I just think that it just gives me so much more control over my car and just allows me to do a lot more different movements that I couldn't before. But yeah, with all that out the way, let's get into the first segment. Okay, so stage 1, pretty simple, literally requires 3 controls, which are your jump, your directional air roll, and your left analog stick. Now the movement we want to get from this is sort of an outward rotation, right? Just like this. And to do that, we're going to hold our directional air roll and point our left analog stick in the opposite direction to it. So because we're using air roll left here, we're going to point our analog stick to the right. And if you are using air roll right, just point it to the left. And as we go through the tutorial, just do the opposite, I guess. And you will end up with this sort of movement. Now, the idea of the end of stage 1 is where we only do half of that movement, right? So we'll get to this point here and then we just stop. And that is it. That is stage 1. So just try and get consistent with it. Try and get to that point. And that's it. You've done stage 1. Okay, now there is a small margin of error, so you can go off slightly, but don't go off too much because you'll mess up the rest of the stages and you won't be able to do the flip. So just try and get that point and go back down, get that point, go back down, and do that constantly. Then once you get a good degree of consistency, you're ready to move on to stage 2. So let's get on to it. Okay, so stage 2 is even easier than the first one. It's literally just using one control, which is your left analog stick. Now, this is a movement that you want to carry on from stage 1. So get consistent with it and then apply stage 2. You can't really do this separately because it doesn't work. But essentially, after stage 1, stage 2 is literally just letting go of your directional air roll. So you do a 180 and your car, 180s. So you end up with stage 1 and then you 180 and your car will end up like that. Okay, and you really do want to make sure that it ends up slightly leant forward, I guess you could look at it as, like this, because it's very important that you end up in this position for stage 3, right? So after stage 1 and 2, your movement should look like this. Okay. And once you've got that consistently, that's when you can move on to stage 3. So remember, integrate them both, don't do them separately. And then once you've got that both, once you've got it down, you can move on to stage 3. So let's get on to it. Okay, so stage 3, even simpler than the last one. However, it's not a movement, it is a mechanic. And it's a very basic one, the one we all know, the backflip. Okay, so by this point, if you are here, you should be able to do stage 1 and 2 quite consistently and quite fluently. So you should be able to get this sort of movement going, right? But without the flick, obviously. So that movement, and then end up like that. Now, this is where the positioning of the car at the end of stage 2 is really important, because when we get to this point, and this is where we want to be, right? Oh. If we backflip here, so if we get to this point here, and we're slightly forward, we backflip, we're going to go forward, which is what we want, because at this point we're going to hit the ball. However, if our front is slightly forward, like this, we're going to go backwards. Okay, so making sure that your front is the one slightly forward is very important, so that you can get that forward momentum and hit the ball. But that is it. That is literally it. Now, I have to stress that this tutorial is just to look at the movement of the Breezi Flick and not integrate the ball in it. The integration of the ball has to come with practice, and it's more sort of muscle memory where the ball goes and how you hit it. However, I can give you a few pointers to how to start that. Okay, so you shouldn't just rely on this. You should practice quite a lot, but this is just a couple pointers that can help you. So let's get into those. Okay, so we're on to the pointers of how to integrate the ball. Now, the first one is I can give you a general sort of location of where to put the ball on your car, right? And now this is relative to the air roll you're using. So as I said, we are using air roll left here. So the ball is going to go sort of, if you can see, the front right part of the hood, right? So obviously if you are on or using air roll right, put it on the front left. Okay, this will give you a general location. With practice, you will look at the precise location and you'll just learn it, and it will basically become muscle memory at that point of where to put it. But that's that one. Okay, so it should end up on the front left, kind of like that. Okay, now the second tip I can give you is it's all about the pace or the speed of your car, right? Because if you are faster than the ball is literally going to roll over you, go on top of your hood, like so, and you won't be able to flick it. And the second one is where you're going too slow than the ball and it rolls off the front of your car. Okay, so you need to be able to get the sort of same pace as it, flick it up, and then be able to hit it, right? Go at the same pace and then flick it like that. And that is what you want to aim for. But those are the only tips that I can give you. The rest, as I said, is going to come from practice, muscle memory, learning the position of the ball on your car, and that's it. But that is it. I will be leaving a couple clips of me doing the Breezi Flick in a different in-game scenarios. You can slow it down, look at the fluency of the movement from stage 1 to 3. Just look at how it's done, okay? But I just want to thank you all for watching. If you did like this video, feel free to like it. If you do want to see some other tutorials, looking forward to the series maybe, feel free to sub. And if you do have any questions or any other video ideas, leave them in the comments. I will read them and I will answer your questions. But truly, I appreciate all of you watching, and I will see you next time.